Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Today is Tuesday. We are closing in on the big holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa, everybody who's celebrating next week. We're celebrating here at SportsGrid, of course, the football season coming to an end in college football. We've got the bowl games coming up this week, as well as some huge games in the college football playoff. We will discuss that as well. Jacob Camenker will join us courtesy of USA Today. We'll break down the latest in the National Football League. Of course, we have the SportsGrid 60, the sound off. And we'll go through the games that happened last night on Monday Night Football. And unfortunately, folks, for me, I know nobody wants to hear it. Nobody cares about my fantasy teams. I get it. But knocked out in both my fantasy football leagues last night. Made it all the way down right to the end. But it's just me and you guys for the rest of the year now. No fantasy to talk about here. I know you're all disappointed watching the show today. For me, I understand that. But our producer, Frank, he's still alive. He's worried about it. He plays against the Drones last week. He beat the Drones. Congratulations. All right, let's get to the Monday Night Football games. They stunk. That's all. What are you going to say? Falcons and Raiders last night. This game was it worse than the other one? Probably, I guess. Falcons win 15-9. Raiders started Spencer Rattler. He was brutal. Kirk Cousins was no better. But Atlanta somehow found a way to win and stay in the playoff fight. For the Raiders at this point, they were missing Mason Crosby. Their running back got hurt too, Sincere McCormick. It's just a shell of what they looked like at the beginning of the season. And the Raiders are now challenging for one of the top 3 picks in the upcoming NFL draft. But the question for the Falcons at this point remains, do they eventually make a change at quarterback? I mean, Kirk Cousins still has not played well, and Raheem Morris addressed that last night.
He's got to play better. And, obviously you got to go back, you got to be able to look at everything. But, he wants to play better. He's got to play better. We got to find a way to get him to play better. And obviously we'll get to work tomorrow, and that's a part of our process, right? You go, you look at the tape, you review with the people that needs to be reviewed with. We get all the coordinators in the room. We'll talk with everybody. And we got to play better at the quarterback position.
So part B to that, if he can't, are you prepared to replace him with Michael Penix?
We got everybody in our roster for a reason, right? We got so much to get better at, and those things will always be discussed. That's just the nature of the beast in football. It's just so heavily talked about it at the quarterback position because there's only one guy out there. So for us, man, our mentality is to find a way to win the next game. That's just the mentality that we're going to have.
Glad to find a way to win. it's never easy going on the road and winning this league, and it was great to find a way. Certainly a lot of plays that you look at and you say, hey, we can be better, I can be better. So those conversations will happen certainly, but great to find a way with. Our defense was phenomenal tonight. Special teams was phenomenal. Run game was strong. We just didn't convert enough third downs really to stay on the field and then turn some of those drives into points.
By the way, I misspoke here, but I want to correct myself. I said that the Raiders started Spencer Rattler. They started Desmond Ridder. But is there a difference between those? I'm starting to think about it. Is there a difference between those two quarterbacks? I don't know. Anyway, all right, Bears-Vikings. This was the game that just crushed me watching this one. And the Vikings, it was because I was playing against all these Vikings, and the Bears were just so bad yesterday until the end. And the score didn't even indicate how close the game was. This could have been a shutout very easily. Bears couldn't get a fourth down for their life. Was counting on it. Same thing for third down. And basically, Sam Darnold, Aaron Jones, they kind of carved up the Bears' defense. The Bears look cooked. Even with this new head coach, interim coach Thomas Brown, things are not going well. Let's hear from Sam Darnold after the game as the Vikings are now charging, believe it or not, toward the number 1 seed in the NFC.
I think just to be able to, come in, it starts with, KO obviously as well, being able to send that message to us. And we've talked about it all the time. We talked about it, ever since really OTAs. I feel like our guys have been doing such a good job of just attacking what's in front of us. And we're just going to continue to do that.
Last night, you guys actually clinched playoffs last night after the Sunday night game. Do you take a second to absorb that at all before getting back to getting ready for this one?
I think for us, it truly is, it's great, first and foremost, to be able to, recognize it, during the night and to be able to be with some of my teammates when that happened, that's special in that moment. But to be able to wake up today and know that we have a job to do, that's the best part about our team is we can enjoy moments like that and be mature enough to be able to come into work today and get the job done.
All right, now the question for the upcoming week in the NFL isn't so much about the Vikings or the Bears. It's really about the Kansas City Chiefs at this point and the injury to Patrick Mahomes. It looks like there's a chance Mahomes could play this week. He has a high ankle sprain. The likelihood is the Chiefs could just shut him down for a week and then have him return Christmas Day. We will see. We'll have an update on that on tomorrow's show. Meanwhile, Mike Tomlin says that there's a chance that TJ Watt could play for the Steelers this week. He left last week's game with an injury, and also they'll need George Pickens back for that offense. The Steelers just not looking the same without him. Former Steeler Deontay Johnson has an excuse to be away from the team. He has, had a little bit of a checkered history here with the Ravens, basically refusing to play in the game as well. I would doubt we'll see him the rest of the season. And the same could be said for former first-round pick Clyde Edwards-Helaire from the Kansas City Chiefs. He was released. He had suffered from PTSD over the last year or so. Hopefully he gets a new opportunity to play somewhere. The biggest story in sports yesterday, honestly, comes in college football. Dave Clawson resigned as the head coach of Wake Forest. He was there 11 years. He's going to remain with the university in an advisory role, working with their athletic director. They made this announcement yesterday, and it basically came out of nowhere, completely unexpected for the Demon Deacons. West Virginia has set aside $7.5 million for Rich Rodriguez's new staff. That should be coming soon. Also, some big transfer portal news for Penn State. They're going to lose one quarterback, a backup quarterback, Bo Pribula. James Franklin talked about the announcement yesterday. They get their starter back, but it looks like their highly touted backup is headed to a new school.
We got problems in college football, and I can give you my word. Bo Pribula did not want to leave our program, and he did not want to leave our program until the end of the season. But the way the portal is and the timing of it and the way our team is playing, and when you play the position of quarterback and there's only one spot and those spots are filling up, he felt like he was put in a no-win situation, and I agree with him. And number one, I hate for it. Number one, most importantly, for Bo Pribula. I don't think it's in the best interest of the student athlete. I don't think it's in the best interest of college football. But I think that's our challenge right now, right? Who is really running college football and making the best decisions for the student athletes and for our sport as a whole?
Well, Coach Franklin, I have the answer for you. I know who's running college football. It's the money. Washington State quarterback John Mateer headed to his third team, it looks like, in 3 years. He's going to be in the transfer portal. He used to back up Cam Ward, believe it or not, once upon a time. He'll have no problem getting work. All right, in the NBA, crazy game last night between the Pistons and Heat. I don't know if you caught this one. Jimmy Butler had a triple-double. Heat was down big. They came all the way back to tie the game. They went to overtime, but Detroit wins 125-124, the final there. Cavs still the NBA's best, 23-4. They beat the Nets by 29 points. Nuggets survive a huge comeback by the Sacramento Kings. They also win by a point. James Harden with a huge game last night with the Jazz and the Clippers. They win 144-107. Hey, the NBA Cup Championship is tonight. Gilbert McGregor will be along to have a preview of this a little bit later. We've got the Thunder taking on the Bucks. Thunder -4.5 points. And also a new number one in college basketball, Tennessee. Previous number one, Kansas, of course, lost a couple of games, and they fall to number 8 in the country. Coming up next, we've got Bill Bender coming up from Sporting News. We're going to break down the latest in Notre Dame football. We've got a big game Friday night in South Bend as the Irish take on Indiana. Biggest game for them maybe in their school history. And also, what does the Army-Navy result mean for the bowl season as well? We'll tell you next. Don't go away.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are one-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. What he texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. College football playoff begins this weekend. And to help us preview it, we bring in Bill Bender from Sporting News. We got a lot to get to, including, by the way, a fun game tonight, I think, between Memphis and West Virginia. We'll have a preview of a couple of the bowl games. Bill, once again, great to have you back here on the show. Let's real quick just recap what we saw on Saturday. I had a chance to watch the Army-Navy game pretty much in full. It was weird to just have one game on a Saturday. I guess it was the second game, South Alabama game Saturday night. But this was like pretty much a domination by Navy. What happened here? What did Army just fell completely flat in their biggest game of the season? Really strange.
Yeah, no, Navy took advantage of, their opportunities, the turnovers. They came out with the quick start, and that made a difference. And the unpredictability of that game reigned supreme. I mean, what a fun watch. And for Army, a reminder that they had just come off the American Athletic Conference Championship, and this game ended up being a little bit of a letdown somehow. But, in talking to Joe Theismann last week, he was doing some work with USAA before the game. He had a good point. He wants to keep this game in that standalone spot. And I tend to agree with him. And I know that in some cases, some years, it might impact the playoff, but there's just something about being able to sit and watch that game by itself. Otherwise, it's going to get lumped in with rivalry week or week 10 or something else. And it's just not, it's still going to be awesome, but it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, and they could put a game at night after that game ends. I don't see any reason why they couldn't get that figured out, but life is changing, Bill. I mean, we got the NFL on Christmas and Friday nights and Saturday nights. I mean, things we never thought we would see. All right, Marcus Freeman gets extended by Notre Dame. This is not a surprise. He's done very well with them. 30-9 record, 2-1 bowl game. Also a question of even if Notre Dame was to lose in the playoff, like who would they hire that's done a better job than him? Probably no one. So I give them credit for keeping the stability there. And, it certainly seems to me like they have a good chance to win this first game against Indiana. But you know me, when it comes to Notre Dame, I'm a guy that loves to take those points when the Irish play, and they play Indiana on Friday night.
I think I'm going to replace that high school helmet behind me with a big gold helmet just for you one of these days if Notre Dame ever wins this thing, right?
Never.
On the Freeman extension, you mentioned the 30-9 record, 7-2 against ranked teams the last 2 years. And maybe they're not like powerhouse teams, but they're still ranked teams. They do have a dud every once in a while. Northern Illinois was a little more than a dud. Marshall a couple years ago, season-making games for other schools. But I think in general, Marcus Freeman has taken the highs and lows with that job and done a nice job. Now you get into this Indiana game where snow's going to be a factor. Two teams that were in the top 5 in turnover margin, +16 and +15. So that's one of my big curiosities of the weekend. How does weather really play a factor? It's been 3 weeks, this long layoff. How does that factor with these two teams? And, the in-state thing is in. I think we will have a competitive game, but I still like the Irish to win, which would push them into the quarterfinals. And maybe Marcus Freeman can take this team on a run.
Yeah, doubtful, Bill, but okay. That's your opinion. Fine. All right, let's talk about the 2 bowl games tonight. Really, bowl season got started Saturday, but I feel like more attention tonight. This first one should be a good one, I think. Memphis and West Virginia. And both games tonight are featuring teams that have new coaches incoming. Rich Rodriguez is going to be the next coach at West Virginia. So naturally, Bill, this is the hard part for me. I feel like they're doing a better job getting the players to play in the bowl games this year. I will say that. My concern is, especially after watching the South Alabama guy opt out, what was that, 30 minutes before the game last week? My fear is that some stuff happens with one of these teams tonight, specifically West Virginia. They're getting 4.5 points tonight, total 58.5 in the Frisco Bowl. Can we count on players playing, though, in this? That's my concern.
They have an All-American tackle, Wyatt Millum, too, who kind of similar situation. They've been questioning whether or not he was going to play. I hope he does. West Virginia without their coach, that's always tough to gauge going into a bowl game. I know this line continues to move up, but, in another sense, the guys that are there are auditioning for Rich Rodriguez and for next season. So I think we're going to get a competitive game tonight. I'll probably take West Virginia to cover. Memphis had a really strong close to the season. But in terms of a competitive bowl game, that game you mentioned Saturday night had a big spread, South Alabama, Western Michigan, but it was a competitive game all the way through. And like you said, when we have more players playing these games, they are more competitive. They're still fun to watch, and I'll definitely have that one on the TV tonight.
Yes, it seems like this first week there's a lot of opt-outs, and then maybe as the games get more serious later in the winter, hopefully we'll get players playing. Same situation tonight, if I'm not mistaken. I think Dan Mullen took the job at UNLV. So the total is 48.5. They're getting 1.5 points. So he'll evaluate players for the future. Look, Cal, not a great team in college football, but they played a lot of competitive games this season. Very close games, too. Boy, this seems like a toss-up to me. I know UNLV probably the better team, all things being equal, a month ago, but how about tonight?
Yeah, tough. Tough pick. I took UNLV because I do think they're the better team, but again, without the coach, that factors in. Cal battled in a lot of games this season. I always rewind back to that Miami game, and they played hard for Justin Wilcox all season. They tapered off a little bit at the end of the season, but still, this will be one of those really good games that I think comes down to a field goal, and it could get into the high scoring, hit the over in the second half. But that UNLV program, again, guys auditioning for Dan Mullen a little bit. I think he's going to make them a cool program down the line here with the resources, with the NIL, which is kind of ironic given the situation with the quarterback earlier this season, and the high school talent that they have in that state. The seeds are there for them to become a Group of 5 power.
Yeah, I agree. And Mullen specifically, I think, honestly, I mean, Billy Napier turned it around, I guess, a little bit in Florida, but most are saying that Dan Mullen, Bill, even may have done a better job than he did there. Real quick, before we head into the weekend, do you like the scheduling of the way that they've done this with the college football playoffs, sort of staggering them out a little bit? I'm glad there's no conflicts with these games.
No, I do. I'm glad we get to see them all at once. I do wish we would go bang, bang, bang right after the regular season, though. I don't like the 3-week layoff. I wish we would make this more like the NFL playoffs where we just go play right away, and then you can take 2 weeks before the championship game, and you run the risk of going up against the NFL, and that's going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, that's fair. Although Georgia's very happy to take this time off to see if they get Beck back. I think so.
Yeah.
All right, Bill. Appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch up again later in the week. Thanks again.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this bet than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Time for the SportsGrid Sound Off. We will preview the upcoming game. It's a Friday night affair between Notre Dame and Indiana in the college football playoff. We'll hear from the head coaches and also get a preview from our very own Ben Stevens. Time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. Lots of football on the menu this weekend. College football, bowl games, college playoffs, NFL game Saturday, NFL game Sunday. I don't know how we're going to do it all, but we will figure it out here at SportsGrid. Who will lead the charge? Our very own Ben Stevens. Here's a preview of the big game between Indiana and Notre Dame. The winner moves on in the first round of the college football playoff.
History will be made on Friday night in South Bend, Indiana, under the watchful eye of Touchdown Jesus. The first ever game in the history of the 12-team college football playoff. The first ever college football playoff game played on campus. That is what is at stake for the in-state showdown between the 7-seed Notre Dame and the 10-seed Indiana. The Fighting Irish booked as more than a touchdown favorite at home against the Hoosiers. Our total stands at 51 and a hook. It is the 30th all-time meeting between these two schools from the state of Indiana. Notre Dame has won 23 of the previous 29, the first matchup since 1991. And just to note, one of the key matchups for this game, Indiana's best rushing defense in the country against an Irish offense that is top 10s in terms of running that football. History will be made on Friday. Craig Mish, back to you.
Thanks, Ben. And Bill Bender will be back with us Friday to preview all the college football games, including the college football playoff games this weekend. All right, straight off a contract extension, Marcus Freeman of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish has a chance to make history, as Ben said, on Friday night. Never seen a 12-team college football
I've been
playoff.
preaching the same message is that everybody knows it's a big game, but the approach to the game can't change. What we've been doing in terms of our preparation mentally and physically has given this program a chance to succeed. Now, all season long, we've talked about elevating, right? Continuously finding the ways to get better in terms of how we prepare. And that's no different as you prepare for this one, is that we have to find ways to enhance the way we prepare and continue to elevate as a team with that same approach that we've had. And we'll get to Friday when it gets here.
It's a big game. It's a different kind of game. But the fact that you've been in win or else mode basically since September 7th, how can that work to this program's advantage?
Yeah, it's something I've been preaching to the guys, and something that I reiterated this last week was that we've been in playoff situational games since week 3, and we understand that. And every game that we play in is a version of a playoff game in our minds. And so continue to understand that don't have any added pressure for this one that you haven't had the previous 10, right? And so our guys understand that. That's going to be the message that I continue to reiterate, and let's just focus on the way we're preparing more than anything.
Notre Dame no stranger to big games, but Indiana a pretty big stranger to big games like this. Maybe the biggest game in the history of the school with the 12-team college football playoff. Curt Cignetti knows what's at stake going into Friday night, and the job that he has done does not stop there.
Yeah. Well, as you guys know, I'm a film junkie, right? I mean, in my free time, I'd just as soon be watching tape than be doing anything other than sitting in my recliner. So, you know, that's a couple years of, low red, high red work. Nowadays, you can PFF every touchdown pass from the 1 to the 4, from the 25 to the 5. And then, you know, kind of going through those and seeing what might fit and, pull up something, depending on who you're playing, that scheme-wise might match something. So you're always trying to gain the edge in this business because, all these coaches can coach. All these teams are good, despite, the records. The margin for error is very slim every game. And you've got to always work toward finding the edge.
And in Friday night's game, Notre Dame currently a 7.5-point favorite over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Total of 51.5 as these two teams showdown. The winner moves on to the next round of the college football playoffs. We got to move on now and take a quick timeout. When we come back, Jacob Camenker joins us courtesy of USA Today. We break down the Monday night football games and try not to throw up.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh, yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Jacob Camenker joins us courtesy of USA Today, and he's going to eat lunch after this segment. So as I mentioned previously, hard to hold your food down watching these 2 games last night. And I understand, Jacob, Monday Night Football, not always going to be great. We were very fortunate. We had some really good games on Sunday. We kind of thought going into Monday night these games could be rough, but they ended up being very ugly. I guess we could start with the uglier of the 2, Falcons Raiders, just field goals and stuff, 15-9. The final in this one, the poor Raiders, they're just playing it out to try and they're not going to say they're tanking, but they're not even playing Max Crosby. They're trying to get number 1 or number 2 pick. What are the Falcons doing, Jacob? What in the world are the Falcons doing? It feels like a month since they've looked good on a football field. Will this ever change?
I don't know if it'll change at this point this season. They looked great to start the season. Their offense really started to come together when Kirk Cousins had that 500-yard game against the Buccaneers. They beat Tampa Bay head-to-head twice, and it looked like they were in control of this division, and they've just completely squandered it. And I think Monday night was just a microcosm of what their season has been. All of a sudden, they don't trust Kirk Cousins. He doesn't look right. He doesn't look like he's fully confident in his ability to pass the ball. And you see those stats that he put up last night. That was the entirety of the game. They threw 17 passes. They scored 15 points. And really, a lot of those points came off of mistakes by the Raiders. The Raiders had 2 punts blocked, an extra point blocked, and gave up a safety in the game.
Wow.
Without those, the Falcons might have lost that game to the Raiders, who are arguably the worst team in the NFL right now. It's between them and the Giants, really. But I don't know what to make of the Falcons. They have enough talent that they should be a good team. They should be fighting for that NFC South title, but they just aren't performing at all this season.
No, and you're right. I hate to say it, but the Raiders, Giants, Panthers, Jaguars, we got a lot of bad teams filling out the stretch here, and Kirk Cousins hasn't looked any better. Lions are still the favorite to be the number 1 seed, minus 125. Philadelphia is right on their heels, but the Lions, at this point, Jacob, have suffered so many injuries, not just to Aiden Hutchinson a little bit over a month ago, but several other players, Alex Anzalone. Their defense is just shattered right now. I just hope for their sake they can get that bye, Because if for some reason they're forced to play in the first week of the playoffs, it could be a quick out. Crazy to think.
Yeah, because if they get that number 5 seed, they're probably going to play the Buccaneers or the Rams, and both of those teams, the Buccaneers, they beat the Lions earlier in the year, and we saw last year that Rams-Lions playoff game was excellent. 2 really great coaches, Dan Campbell and Sean McVay, going head-to-head. But with the state of the Lions and how banged up they currently are, it's hard to back them in this. So I agree with you 100%. Their focus down the stretch needs to be doing everything they can to get that number 1 overall seed, just get some of those pieces back for their potential Super Bowl run. Now, like I said, Dan Campbell's a great coach. I think Aaron Glenn has done really an excellent job with that defense. Ben Johnson, as we know, is one of the top young offensive minds in the game. So I think their coaching staff will keep them competitive no matter what. But after a certain point, you just get so many injuries, and it's impossible to overcome them. Their offense is going to stay strong, but I just don't know how their defense is going to hold up. And as we saw against the Bills, against really good mobile quarterbacks like Josh Allen and guys who can throw the ball down the field, they're going to have trouble preventing them from scoring just because of the sheer number of injuries there.
Yeah, no, there's no question at this point the Lions are in a different position they were just a short time ago. All right, Vikings-Bears, speaking of non-competitive, another non-competitive game. Vikings just dominated this game. Bears couldn't stop the Vikings at all, and they couldn't get a 4th down conversion. So I don't know what more there is to add here. The Bears are one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL this season, and the Vikings are one of the most surprising. Did I sum it up?
I think that's about right. I think the real consternation people have with the Bears, I think, is they were considering a coaching change last year. There were some rumors about it. Were they going to move on from Matt Eberflus? And the defense played well enough in the second half of the year that they gave him this extra year, and it just hasn't panned out at all. The offense has been a disaster. Shane Waldron struggled in his first year as the offense coordinator, was fired. They promoted Thomas Brown to offensive coordinator. Now he's the interim head coach. I mean, there's just so many moving parts here that how can Caleb Williams have success there as a rookie? You hate to see it when a highly touted pick comes in and there's a lot of chaos around him, especially with a roster that talented. It feels like they should have done a better job. And then on the flip side of it, coming into the year, I looked at the Vikings roster and their offense, and I said, hey, if Sam Darnold is good, this team has a chance to be better than people expected. But I didn't expect them to be this good. I don't think anyone did. 12-2 with a legitimate chance to win the NFC North. It's probably going to come down to that last game when they play the Lions in Week 18. I think that just speaks to the great job Kevin O'Connell has done, and his hire of Brian Flores to run that defense now 2 years ago has really paid off, because when the Vikings made the playoffs in O'Connell's first season, they had the bottom-ranked defense in the league. Now they're one of the toughest units to play because Flores uses all those exotic pressure schemes, and I just think it's just, if you look at this from an organizational standpoint, Minnesota got the right guys in the right places, built around without a quarterback, really, or built around Kirk Cousins, but then said, hey, we can do this with another guy, and they moved on from it at the right time. So kudos to the Vikings for figuring this out. They're going to be a fun team to watch in this postseason.
Yeah, look, their defense has been fantastic. So every game they play, they have a chance to win. You can't rule them out. AFC and NFC kind of look clear to me at this point, with the exception of the division winner in the NFC West. It feels like New Orleans kind of gave Washington that win going for 2. So Washington, Green Bay, Minnesota, some combination of that, probably going to the playoffs. So I guess the question is really surrounding Geno Smith at this point. That's really where we're going with this, with the NFC West. I know the Rams are the hot team, Jacob, but with Geno Smith, I do think Seattle not only has a chance to win the wild card, but maybe even win the division. But if I find out this week that Geno's out a week or 2, I don't know. I feel like it's a wrap. I feel like it's the Rams.
I'm right there with you. I've been backing the Rams for several weeks now, maybe even months at this point. When they started to get hot, I said they're going to have the team with the best chance to win this division kind of from the back of the pack. And I think that's panning out right now. Seattle with Geno Smith, I think, would have a chance, but we saw what Sam Howell looked like behind that offensive line, and I think this is something that hasn't gotten a lot of play in Seattle, but Geno Smith, because he's a veteran and he gets the ball out of his hands quickly, he hides kind of a lot of the issues that Seattle has in giving up quick pressures. His strength has been negating those and getting the ball into the hands of Seattle's playmakers. Sam Howell holds the ball so long. I mean, he took the fourth most sacks in NFL history last season as the Commanders starter. And I like Sam Howell's skill set as much as the next guy, but you cannot hold on to the ball too long in the NFL. And especially you cannot do that behind a bad offensive line or one that gives up a lot of pressure. So that has a recipe for disaster written all over it if he has to start. So I think it entirely depends on Geno Smith coming back and how healthy he is. Now, knowing Geno, he's going to want to try to play through this. He's one tough dude, but just seeing how hobbled he was on the bench, I'm just not sure he's going to be able to do it. So I think the Rams are the sides of back there, and I think that they have more of a fighting chance in the NFC playoff picture to kind of get a surprise postseason win.
Yeah, and it does feel like Arizona kind of gave this thing away. They were in the driver's seat, and then Seattle in the driver's seat. But Jacob, you make a good point. I mean, you honestly, at this point in the NFL, I've talked about this many times, Jacob. You really don't have to give me the back of the jersey name for the backup quarterback in the NFL. None of them are good. It doesn't matter who they are. Now, Sam Howell had a great college career. Ritter, Rattler, they all had good college careers, but we have an epidemic of bad backups, Jacob, in the NFL. It literally doesn't matter who comes in. None of them are good.
You're not wrong. There's only a few guys that can come in and you feel pretty confident that they can get you to a 500 record. So I agree with you there.
I'd like to know who that is. A few? I can't name one. Who?
Jameis Winston, maybe. Cooper Rush.
Winston? Oh. Jacob, I'll let you go on that note.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this bet than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Big night in the NBA. If you are a big NBA Cup fan, we'll get into exactly what that is, what it means with Gilbert McGregor coming up from Sporting News. But first, let's dive into the latest in college basketball, in case you missed it last night. The number one team in the country now, the Tennessee Volunteers. A lot of big spreads I've noticed tonight in college basketball. Tennessee is going to take on Western Carolina, where they are 38.5-point favorites. That's one of the bigger games tonight. Cooper Flagg and Duke will take on George Mason, 19.5-point favorites. Game I'll be watching, Gators take on North Carolina. Clemson takes on South Carolina. But, of course, we bring in Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News to discuss the latest in the NBA. We got the NBA Cup to dive into as well. It's great to have you back here on the show, Gilbert. I know it has been a minute, so thanks for coming in. Let's dive in first to the game of the night. Well, actually, a lot of close games. I don't want to say game of the night because there's a lot of one-point games and overtime games last night. The team that I watch here in South Florida, the Miami Heat, boy, I thought they were cooked last night. And then all of a sudden, Jimmy Butler went crazy, and they came back, almost beat the Pistons. They had won 4 games in a row. 125-124 was the final there. Heat's playing better basketball than they were at the beginning of the season. But, Gilbert, it does feel like every Heat season I've seen the last few years, too. I just don't know that we're going to – I don't see Tyler Hero there. I know he's having a great year. But is this Heat team poised to go anywhere outside of being like a 6 or a 7 and then eventually losing to like Cleveland or Boston in the playoffs? That's what I wonder.
Well, Craig, first off, good to be back. But, we got a little bit of a dose of playoff Jimmy in early December in that game, but it just wasn't enough for this team. And I think we've kind of sang the same song about these Miami Heat for the past few seasons. It's felt like they are one piece away. And how do they get that piece? A few years ago or last year, they thought it was Terry Rozier, and he's been good, but he hasn't necessarily been that missing piece to get them over the top and make them seem like they are a team that could get back to the finals like they did a few years ago. There's so many questions and trade rumors and things about what's going to happen with this future of this team. I think that is definitely taking a toll on the guys on this roster. So I'm curious to see what the future holds for them. Can they make a move to improve in the margins to get out of that 5, 6, 7 range in the Eastern Conference? Because outside of the top 2 teams, the conference has seemed like it's been wide open. So I'm curious to see if the Heat can do anything. But as it stands right now, I think they're going to continue to hover in that 4 to 6 range, which kind of puts an interesting spot on your ceiling in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it does. And maybe the Heat can trade a 2042 draft pick, which I think they still have that pick maybe remaining. They usually trade the rest. All right, tonight it's the NBA Cup, Gilbert. I'm not a huge fan of this, but at least we're getting 2 really good teams playing, and I think that we can say that with the Bucks taking on the Thunder. It seems like they care about playing in this and being in it. Total 215.5. OKC, one of the best teams in the NBA. Giannis now all of a sudden putting together an MVP resume again this year. Any opinion on tonight's game in particular? Who you like in this matchup?
Well, you know what? I'm kind of torn on this one, Craig. It's the second best team in the NBA and the second best player in the NBA. So it's a game 7 type situation. Do you side with the best player or do you side with the best team? I'm curious at how the Thunder are going to guard Giannis Antetokounmpo. We know what he's capable of doing, but we also know that the Thunder are a team who know how to neutralize stars. Luka Doncic had a tough game against them last week. They basically shut the entire Rockets offense down in the semifinals on Saturday. So I'm leaning towards the Thunder just because I think they have more depth than the Bucks do. And I think that they have the personnel to make life difficult for Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And now, who are the others that are going to step up for the Bucks? I trust the Thunder's others more than I trust the Bucks' others. And I also think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a lock to get 30-plus in this game.
Yeah, it should be a great game, I think, tonight. And by the way, you have a potential now for Giannis to even maybe win the MVP. He's jumped into the picture. He opened up 10-1, 15-1. Bucks weren't playing well. Now, all of a sudden, he's on fire. They're 7-1 now. He's 7-1, to win the MVP. SGA is plus 280. But Gilbert, look who the favorite is again to win the NBA. I mean, how many years in a row? I feel like, by the way, you see the yellow. It feels like the white has been the same every year. Jokic is the favorite, and Luka's like 5 or 6-1. Luka climbs up a little bit, then something happens, and he doesn't win, and then Jokic wins the MVP. And I understand Embiid has been there in the past too, and it's not always Jokic, but my gosh, they can't get that guy out of being the favorite to win the league MVP. It's every year.
You know, it's funny, that Embiid year, I kind of feel like there was some voter fatigue involved. And I think coming in this year was when you probably would have gotten value on Nikola Jokic because we thought that there was going to be voter fatigue again. And I think the narrative and the conversation was Jokic needed to do things that we've never seen him do before in order to be in that conversation again. That's exactly what he's done. It was last week where he had that 56-point game followed by a 48-point game in a 25-hour span. You know, he's leading the league in rebounds per game, where he's right at the top there. He and Karl-Anthony Towns have been going back and forth. He's right in the top 3 in assists per game and right in the top 3 in scoring as well for a Nuggets team who has a lot of flaws. So they are where they are thanks in large part to what he's doing. I'm not going to say he's dragging this team, but he is doing a lot and carrying a lot of weight to help this Nuggets team. And they're hovering in that, 3 to 7 range in the Western Conference, and it's mostly because of how excellent he's been this year. And I do kind of think he's created such a gap between everybody else that he's going to run away with MVP again this year.
Yeah, and Denver would just love to be somewhere in the mix in the West. They don't have to be the number one. All right, real quick, prop market tonight on Giannis. Let's take a quick look here. As you said, second best player in the NBA, third, first, you could debate it. His points tonight, 30.5 in this one. A little bit of juice toward the over, under, minus 106. Plus money on the rebounds, 12.5, plus 108. Under 138, minus 138 money line there. 5.5 assists, over, minus 104, under, minus 122. All right, screenshot that, Gilbert, in your mind. Any of those in particular you like?
This is tricky to me. Part of me wants to say stay far away from Giannis just because of how good the Thunder are defensively. But thinking about that, I think he could find a way to really facilitate. And those assists would probably be the most enticing of all those things just because I know the Thunder like to shut down other teams' number one options. Can they do it with Hardenstein and Lou Dort and Alex Caruso? I'm not sure. But that does make me a little leery of how much Giannis is going to be able to score. They might slow the game down. It might be a slow pace. There might not be that much scoring. But him as a rebounder, him as a facilitator is probably the best value for Giannis tonight.
All right, Gilbert, like it, love it. We'll see what happens tonight. And you and I will catch up soon. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Always enjoy joining.
All right, Gilbert McGregor of Sporting News. Coming up next, did you bet on the over or the under for David Montgomery's season rushing yards? Boy, it was close. Also, could we see a 70-yard field goal in the NFL? We'll be right back.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this bet than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Is it possible that one of the Paul brothers are getting ready to fight again against somebody very notorious? We'll tell you. Also, did you miss the Cowboys' attempted field goal this week? Almost 70-yard field goal from Brandon Aubrey. Would they be willing to try it again? Maybe an 80-yard field goal? And oh my gosh, is this a bad beat? If you bet a season prop for a running back in the NFL. Time now for some last licks. It was a great season for David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. It has now come to an end. It looks like he's going to have surgery and be out for an extended period of time, which means all of his betting props are now officially in the books. And for those of you who have Montgomery in fantasy football, unfortunately, looks like you're going to have to pivot going into next week. But Montgomery landed on a season rushing total of 775 rushing yards. Had he continued, probably got over 1,000, I would guess. You know, he and Jahmyr Gibbs sort of split carries. I don't know if you knew that, but there you go. Here's what you may not have known. His season rushing total on the sports books this year, 775 and a half rushing yards. If you bet the over, you are crying right now. You're like me with your fantasy football teams. If you bet the under, you're celebrating your best bet that you've ever made. You'll be talking about this one for years. Anybody out there bet it? Let me know. At Craig Mish on X, at SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV. I want to see somebody out there that's watching this show that actually placed that wager. Please show me that ticket. Show me that screenshot of that. That is a horrible bet. Bad beat. Horrible. 775 and a half. When Frank showed me this, I couldn't believe it. I had to check, but it's valid. This is what his number was going into the season. All right, I was watching this on the Red Zone, I think it was Sunday. Dallas was playing Carolina. Brandon Aubrey was lined up for like a 70-yard field goal. It was like insane. He's arguably one of the best, if not the best, kickers in the National Football League. That used to belong to Justin Tucker. It's not the case anymore. Probably Aubrey. Probably. So Fossil, the special teams assistant coach for the Cowboys, did a press conference yesterday saying that they will try this again and that Aubrey can kick a 70-yard field goal. We've never seen this in the history of the NFL. Maybe even an 80-yard field. Are you kidding me? An 80-yard field goal from a kicker? I remember back in my day, old man day, when Jason Elam, you guys remember that name? From the Denver Broncos. That was always a popular pick for someone to kick the longest field goal in history. And again, he did it at one point because they were playing at altitude in Denver. Aubrey's just got this like maniacal, mechanical leg that just won't stop. Okay, so maybe an 80-yard field goal is in store. How do we score that in fantasy? And by the way, wouldn't that be a good idea in the NFL if somebody kicks a 70-yard field goal to give them 4 points? Wouldn't that be a cool rule? 80-yard field goal, you give him 5. Why not? I like that idea. Finally, Conor McGregor is at it again on social media. This guy just spends way too much of his time for being a multimillionaire on social media. And Conor McGregor was supposed to have an upcoming fight. I've never even heard of the guy. Topuria? Okay, whatever. He says, how about this, Conor McGregor, that he is the next one to fight one of the Paul brothers. This time, on social media, Conor McGregor says that he's not going to fight the guy who fought, the brother who fought Mike Tyson, Jake Paul. He's going to fight Logan Paul, okay, in a boxing edition in India. And then after that, he will return to MMA and probably the UFC, and he will return to fight in the octagon. Everybody who fights one of the Paul brothers, Logan or Jake, I mean, it is all about the money at this point, right? Is there any other thing that is possible? What is to gain from this except for the cash? Now, if something's going on in Conor McGregor's life that we don't know about, that needs the money, so be it. But beyond that, there's no purpose. There's nothing to gain. There's only to lose outside of getting paid. Because if you win, doesn't mean anything, and if you lose, you look like an idiot. So Conor McGregor, my advice to you is get paid, but if you don't need the cash, go back to MMA. Fight a little bit there. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks to our director, Rob, for filling in for Luke. Hope Luke is feeling better. Hopefully we'll see him here tomorrow. Thanks to Frank, of course, our producer of the show. Thanks again to Bill Bender of Sporting News for coming on, Jacob Camenker from USA Today, and also thanks to all of you for watching the show here on the program as well. Just a reminder, coming up next, we've got the early line that's followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock Eastern. Scotty and the gang all ready to go. Game time decisions, in-game live game day, and Sports Rage tonight with Gabe, recapping everything in college basketball and getting you ahead of some of the NFL and college football games as well. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day today. I'll see you back here for our next edition of NewsWire, 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Have a great one, everyone.